Well, welcome, folks. Welcome to another episode of Prophecy Montana podcast. My name is Carrie. We have my wife, Lisa, with us, and we're going to be talking about a very important subject today, actually. And I've titled this live, Trump's Secret Plan to Join the Esoterics. But God Reigns Supreme. And that's very important to know. God wins. No matter what happens, in the end, God wins. And that's the takeaway from this. Now, many esoterics and the belief of the esoteric system is that Satan, it's all upside down. It's all backwards, Lisa. It's all, Satan is the one is the creator, the redeemer of mankind. He's the one that's going to give life. And there's all kinds of different thinks patterns on that whole issue.
Like he's the good brother, and Jesus is the bad deceiver.
That's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And there's just this plethora of different ideas and Gnostic views and stuff, and it's very confused and convoluted depending on which group you join. I mean, I'm not telling anybody to join a group.
I was thinking, because I'm trying to sing music, and I'm looking up that Bethel music, and there's a girl on there that breaks it down, and she's like, what God is they singing to? Like, who are they exactly singing to here? And so when I go to sing a song, I go and listen to her interview that song.
Oh, interesting. So she breaks it down and she finds out who the song is.
Yes.
Based on lyrics and genre?
I mean, not when it's obvious, when it says, give me Jesus, that's obviously God, our creator. But they'll say other words like, let's worship him. And they're not specific with who they're worshiping. So, but she breaks it down. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, well, secret societies have been around for a long time. In fact, we were just watching some Walter Veith, highly recommended to anybody out there and he does a much better job of it than we could ever do. But
all the way back to Cain.
Cain, but even before, they were saying Enoch.
Enoch, okay.
Now, not the Enoch that was translated.
No,
but
obviously not.
But one of the sons of Cain, if I got it right, and so he was the first one to, his son was the first one to build a city, which was Nimrod, and so on and so forth. But this idea of esoteric thinking or secret society has gone all the way back. Everything's secret. Well, and you can look at ancient writings on the wall of the Egyptian pyramids. The common person didn't know what these symbols meant. And so the esoteric meanings back then, or the secret meanings, were very much alive and well way back then. And all throughout history, most people couldn't read and write. I mean, remember, even in the Bible, we read where it talks about the scribes having to be brought forth to be able to write things down, right? That was their job. And so most people didn't understand reading and writing, and this was for the esoterics to understand it, and especially for these encrypted writings, much like that we see in Egypt, especially in Egypt, actually. But there's also a secret language of today. And if you look at a lot of the symbols, like let's say in sports, and even in religion, and in business, a lot of the business symbols, the symbols for the cars, those all have their esoteric meanings. A lot of people don't know that. I mean, again, I would highly recommend watching Walter Veith's Secrets of Secret Societies. It's a whole series that he did on the symbolisms and the breakdown of all the different.
The mitre hat.
Yeah.
The crooked cane.
Yeah, well, if you're going to get into the Catholic Church, sure, those are all symbols too.
Yeah, those are symbols too.
Yeah, and most people don't know what those symbols are, and they take them for granted, and they're just something that they see that has no meaning subscribed to them, but they do. And which takes us to modern politics and the day and age that we're living in now, and our leaders and who's corrupt and who's not, because that's a big question that a lot of people have is, which leader is corrupt and which leader is not. If you take, like, for example, Donald Trump, there's half of the country that believes he's corrupt. Well, less than half. Well, slightly less than half. And then the other half would believe that someone like Joe Biden is corrupt. And they both have their sets of information that they feed their particular group of listeners to convince them that the other party is corrupt. And there's a design behind all of this. And actually, if you read in the book of Revelation about the king of the north and the king of the south, you kind of get the idea that there's two opposing forces that always seem to collide with one another, and they seem like they're enemies, but in reality, they're actually allies. Well, and it's funny, Lisa, because much of these secret societies do go off of family lines and relations, because that's how you can guarantee that there's not going to be, quote, corruption or other influences influencing your purpose and your direction. And they're very careful about who they initiate into the fold, if you will. And but many have thought that, especially the right-wing conservative Republican, base, have thought for years now that Donald Trump was going to be the savior of the world. Basically, he's our last chance. This guy's going to come in and he's going to make it all right. And we so far have seen good things in the presidency so far. Have you heard of this coalition of states? I believe it's abbreviated COS, Coalition of States. Do you know who Mark Levin is on the radio? He's actually a constitutional lawyer that has, for years, hosted a radio show that I used to listen to and enjoy very much. And he talks about a lot of politics, and he talks about different, political pundits and people who are running for different offices. And he points out, what he believes to be violations of the Constitution and champions of the, violators of the Constitution and champions of the Constitution. And he has espoused this coalition of states, right? And so half of the country is really supporting this coalition of states, whereas the other half is saying this is going to turn into something that's tyrannical in nature, that's going to give them more power than they ever had, so they're going to bypass Congress and many of these things. Now, I haven't really looked into it that much, so I don't know how true all of this is, but there is a buildup, isn't there? Evan Soon has just joined us, and she says, scribes were like our secretaries and court reporters. The people were able to read. The law of Hammurabi shows us that the laws were posted publicly. Why post of people can't read them? Okay, that's a good point. All right. Yeah. So that shows a little bit of my ignorance of history, actually, because but I do know during Pharaoh's time, many people could not read the hieroglyphics, okay? Now, that wasn't a very esoteric thing. Now, and there's probably different times in history where people were more literate than others. I know during the Dark Ages, people were very illiterate, and the church took very much advantage of that, especially when everything in the Bible was written in Latin. It was purposely read in a language that they didn't understand. And so this idea of reading the Bible, I mean, what's the point of reading the Bible if nobody understands it? I think that's one of the reasons why the disciples were able to speak in tongues, because it was important for God to decipher and to be able to have the Bible readable in everyone's language. Good evening, brethren, Mary says. God bless. This is Mary. Hi, Carrie. And Lisa has joined us too, Mary. She's in the background. I'm doing most of the talking for the time being, but she's got some Bible quotes and stuff she's going to be reading to us. Heaven Soon says also Pompeii and the cities destroyed by volcanoes have graffiti and signs and newspaper walls that were on public display. That's another good point. During the Roman Empire, there were a lot of literate people, I don't know what the schools were like then, whether they paid for them or not, but there were quite a few literate people. Not everybody was literate. Now, there was a class of people, probably the working class, that possibly were illiterate, but it seems as though uh, that that many of them were. Uh, and Mary says, "Hi, Lisa." She goes, "Hi, beautiful Lisa."
Hello. Thank you.
So
I burned my mouth. I'm so embarrassed. I was going to cover it up, but I forgot. But I was eating a cookie, and I just grabbed it and was putting it in my mouth, and I burned myself with the chocolate.
you got busted.
And I got a huge blister right here.
So, that brings us to modern day and the esoterics of the day. Now there is a language that most people don't understand that I kind of hinted on a little bit. And some of this language is actually sign languages. You'll see the leaders, they will put their hand in their shirt pocket, or they will make little symbols like they're pointing at something, and they're kind of, the finger droops down a little bit, kind of like this. Or when they shake, they shake their hands in a certain way to signal each other that they're a part of a certain secret society, and that they can be trusted if they know the symbols. Now, I know Trish in Progress says, "Good evening, all. I just got out of church." And
Okay.
I guess I missed that one. Well, nice to have you here, Trish.
Yes.
And we're talking about secret societies and Trump's possible involvement at all. But these hand signals all mean something. And if you look at especially the presidents of past and future, or past and present, you can all see them basically making these same gestures. And Mary says it's the best way to get a blister.
Oh, with chocolate? Oh,
Yeah.
painful. I don't even want to look at it. How painful it is.
But they will all be making these gestures, and one of them is I think it's, what is it? This is a gesture. I mean, there's a few that I do know. That's the Baphomet sign. Many of the singers, the rock band singers, will make these types of symbolisms. They'll go like that over their eyes. They'll do all these different things to signify that they're a part of these esoteric secret societies. P. Gran has joined us. School was free in Rome. The tutors were smart slaves. The rich learnt Latin, history, poetry, and politics. The poor only got a basic education. Child slaves weren't educated. Okay, so only the child slaves were uneducated. Everybody else. Well, that sounds like society that we have pretty much today, doesn't it? And so everybody's educated. Now, I wonder if there was some kind of, now I don't know what the schools were like. Maybe you guys know. It sounds like some of you guys have done your Roman history a little bit. What basically were they were free schools, but did they teach like possibly Greek philosophy and a lot of that? I mean, I'm guessing they probably did, right? Because that was kind of the whole religion of the time, that whole paganistic type thing. And so, I know some of the practices of Rome would aghast many people today, even though our system in America was largely borrowed from the Roman culture. It's a republic. Okay. So was Rome. And it had a lot of freedoms that a lot of other countries didn't have. Their court systems were very similar to our court system, with, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, with a jury and all of that. Even our laws are very similar. And our architect as well. If you look at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of very similar architecture. Was a teacher of history. Yeah, you are right, Carrie. Okay. Well, I got a few things wrong earlier. You probably weren't listening earlier when I started the live. But we're getting smarter as time goes by, that's for sure, with the help of our listeners. So, but there's always been a secret esoteric code and writing, okay? According to I just Pike was his name. Can't think of his whole name, but he wrote a book that I'll think of in a second that Walter Wyeth had just mentioned minutes ago, because I was just kind of refreshing up my secret society stuff by watching him. Again, go to Walter Wyeth for a very exhaustive explanation of all of the secret society type stuff. And so dogmas, something in dogmas. You guys know what I'm talking about? Oh, my brain. I told myself I wasn't going to forget that one. Something in dogmas. Alfred Pike, maybe that's it. Anyways, he's the one that's a very high-ranking Mason, Freemason, and he wrote this book, and he's the one that actually had said that these secret societies go way back all the way to Enoch, and it's not the Enoch that was translated, but it was the son of Cain, one of the sons of Cain's, and he was the father apparently of Nimrod, who built the first city, and it goes on and on, and so, and these symbolisms go way, way back. Go ahead, Lisa. You're gonna say something?
Yes. So I was gonna I've been watching some documentaries, and they just are amazing. So there's a museum in Florida. It's called the Coral Castle. And this man has made this over 24 years. 28 years. He used basic tools and pulleys and winches. He made rocks where you can rock on them. And you would think rock would be extremely heavy to rock. Or he has this door and it's pivoted just right where a small child can push it open. It is just so awesome. His name was Edward. I don't know if I could say his last name. Led Scullin. He's a Latvian. Latvian. I can't even say it. But anyways, he was, there's some conspiracy about him where he did nothing but read all kinds of Egyptian hieroglyphics. Is that how you say it? Anyways, he was really into Egypt and how they made those pyramids. So he ended up cracking the code because he made a really cool coral castle. And then what other one I was watching was in Ethiopia, and it was the rock-hewn churches, and they're called Lalibela, and they were made from the top down. That's what's awesome. And they made 11 of them. And, of course, it's in Ethiopia. You can check it out. But, I mean, they're fantastic.
I've seen some of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're really cool. They are the skill that it must have taken to carve these out from the top down like that was astounding.
I know. It's just
okay. So I found the book. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's on Thrift Books. It's a used book here. It's called Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite and Freemasonry by Albert Pike. So anyways, according to this book, it goes Freemason. The idea of secret societies goes way back, all the way back to Enoch, and again, not the same Enoch that we often talk of. That was translated by God, but one of the sons of Cain. So getting around to the presidencies now, it's been said, and I think it's been proved by several people that all presidents have to be considered either from 30, 31st, 32nd, or 33rd degree Mason, mm-hmm. Freemason, before they can be inaugurated. I don't know how true that is, but it does seem like they all have had ties in Freemasonry for sure. Mm-hmm. Because, and let's face it, I don't think it's the presidents who run this country or any other country for that matter. There's, and this is where the esoterics kind of gets a little bit convoluted for some people and a little bit obscured, but the idea that we have these secret societies running entire countries and making laws and forming legislations and stuff like that. I think the basic form of our government works, but there's forces within that government that are constantly tugging and pulling. And we can take this all the way back to the spiritual forces, basically. I mean, there's Christ and Satan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the great controversy in a nutshell. These two wars, or these two forces warring it out.
Good and bad.
Yeah, and you see it all over the world. And that's why I don't think Satan's forces are consolidated. You know, Jesus made that famous saying when he said that a nation divided against itself cannot stand. And if Lucifer was to cast out Lucifer, then, which, interestingly enough, actually happens if you look at some of the examples that we have in history and even in modern day, where I believe Satan actually will possess an individual only to be cast out by a charlatan Christian. Does that make sense? Someone who's posing as a Christian pastor or a priest or something like this. And this happens probably more often than we think. Mm-hmm. And there's an apparent cure. Again, going back to Walter Vyeth and his story, you can listen to his testimony where he talks about a Catholic priest coming in and actually casting out what they believe to be a demon in his child. And but then soon after the Catholic priest would leave, I don't know, some months or whatever, then it would return, only to have to repeat the process. And that's what actually got Walter into digging in a little bit deeper into the Bible and into the truths of the Word of God. And really, he started out to try and disprove it. But ultimately, he came up with the conclusion that this stuff was real and it was really happening. Of course, his wife's husband, or no, his wife's husband, his wife's father was deeply steeped into this supernatural, where he would actually go out and film.
Well, that was his job, yeah.
Yeah, that's how, and I guess he was big in the UK or South Africa or something, wherever he was from.
I don't think it was South Africa.
I don't think so, because that's where he grew up, you know.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong too. I don't know. Well, and they have different TV shows that air in those countries that we'll probably never see. Mm-hmm. But we have our own versions of them. I mean, we see these ghost hunters and these people that go into homes and they record voices and things. I mean, that's basically what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And
well, didn't he see supernatural stuff? I mean, on his documentary when he's talking about meeting her family, meeting her dad, seeing things that, because he was an atheist, but he just couldn't comprehend what was happening. And who would?
Well, it's funny that he mentions that it was very common. P. Grant says he's South African.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, yeah. I think he was pretty much born and raised in South Africa. Where her father was from, the UK was kind of brought up somewhere in that whole story. I don't know if her father was from the UK or she's from the UK or not, but she's probably raised in South Africa too. But, but where was I?
I don't remember. Just that the Catholics can.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Exorcist.
So even though there was all these supernatural things happening in the household, somehow he just discounted it. And he would even talk about rocking chairs, rocking all by themselves, doors and canes walking around. And he was a professor in a university, and he saw these things daily in his household, but for some reason his scientific mind wouldn't let him subscribe anything supernatural to it.
Well, until it started happening to his baby.
Yeah. Linda Lofton says, I watch Walter Vyeth and Martin Smith, Clash of Minds, each Thursday. It's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
It's very well put together. They've done a fantastic job. Of course, Walter's been around for many years. Martin is joined in with Walter. Now, of course, I think Amazing Discoveries prior, he kind of left Amazing Discoveries, and they're kind of on their own, and they have the rights to a lot of his old videos. So if you guys looking for some of his older stuff, especially, I think even the video of The Secret of Societies was actually produced and amazing discoveries, if I'm not wrong.
I hope I grow like Martin. I remember when he first got there, he was tongue twisted. His mouth was getting dry, and he was twitching and blinking and whatever else. I mean, I'm a little nervous all the time when I go up and sing and when I'm in front of the camera. But he grew, and he's grown into a really good believer, and he's retaining it. He's smart and excellent. You know, just like Ricky on our podcast. Remember, he wouldn't read because he was afraid to encounter big words. And
Ricky in the beginning was so terrified of a camera that I literally begged him for what seemed like months. It must have been 6 months or longer before he agreed to sit down and do that first interview. And once we did that first interview, and that was basically his testimony. I mean, it took a little while to get him talking, and then once he forgot about the cameras, he went for it. And I knew he would. I knew he would, and I knew he'd be perfect for the Prophecy Montana too. But we did his testimony. We did the Marsha's testimony and a few others there.
I've really seen Ricky's faith grow leaps and bounds too. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the same thing that's true with us. I mean, hopefully everybody's growing, right?
Yes.
That's the whole idea of sanctification, is that we continue to grow. And, but, you know, when we're talking about, now I haven't seen a whole lot of supernatural things. Now you've mentioned some of the stories about your UFOs and seeing Bigfoot and different things.
I've seen Bigfoot once. I always thought he was a protector. But then all the tribes around the whole world except for the Tule River Reservation, which is actually up there where I'm from, they think he's real, and all the other ones think that he's just a bad spirit.
Well, and to clarify, you lived near the Tule River
Yeah,
Indian
I didn't
Reservation,
live on it.
but you're actually Blackfoot and Shoshone.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and so the Blackfoot believed that the Bigfoot was a spirit, and so
a bad one.
Yeah, and so and we didn't learn this until we moved to Montana, and we spoke to some Blackfeet natives. They're not black. You don't call them Blackfoot. They're Blackfeet. The Blackfeet natives informed us that he was a spirit, and then I made a video on it, actually, describing Bigfoot, and I was looking into it, and I researched some of the similarities between that and supernatural events, perhaps, that were taking place in like India, and some of the missionary stories that I had read when I was a kid. The throwing of rocks, the beating of trees, the screaming, you know, the yelling, the growls, all these things that were so similar to Bigfoot experiences. But, you know, with slight tweaks here and there. But if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, must be a duck. Trish in Progress, she says, I've only been here a few weeks. You never know that about Ricky. Awesome. Yeah, he was very camera shy. Of course, he's not now.
Did not want to read. Didn't want to really. He was afraid because he had to wear his hat, and then he had some people. They hated his hat on, but he feels
Ricky's
comfortable with
it. Ricky's always been very self-conscious of his. Yeah. He's got a receding hairline, and you know, we're all getting older. We're not getting younger.
No.
Growing old is not a flattering thing to take place, and you know, we're all
either you could go with it or you can fight against it.
Well, some people don't age, like my wife. She talks like she's experienced in the aging process, but I don't think you even know what you're talking about.
But Ricky, he disliked the cameras. We had to force him to go on there, and now he's a veteran.
He's an all veteran, yeah, and he's an asset to the channel. So we love Ricky very much, and we love all of the people here on Prophecy Montana. We just think everybody's just been so wonderful. This has been such a great experience. But this, you know, as far as supernatural things, I haven't seen a whole lot. I know that, you know, my friend in L.A. County, he doesn't live in L.A. County, but his sister does, and she's passed away now. She's recently deceased, but she was being harassed by demons prior to that. and they had taken pictures of it and sent it to me, and I studied those pictures for a long time, and yeah, it was kind of creepy. You know, I do have some fascination with angels, and I don't like using like apparitions of evil angels to compare to good angels, but there was something that caught my eye, and that is how they appeared as, you know, in the smoke. It looked like smoke, but if you look at it real close, there was faces in it. And when it says in Isaiah, when Isaiah came before the Lord, and he says, when the Lord spoke, it shook the pillars, and the whole temple was filled with smoke. And I often wondered if that smoke was actually spirits of holy angels. If, you know, because that's one of the forms that they might take. I don't know. Maybe I'm overreaching my imagination too much on this. But so all of these secret things, all of the supernatural stuff that takes place. Now I'm in one of the camp that I believe that there are powerful people that sit down and speak with evil agents to get directions, to take them to the world, to be able to then pass them on to other individuals that pull the strings. And you don't really have to influence world leaders if you're influencing the masses. And I think this is one of the reasons why America has pushed so hard for democracy, right? The democracy. Now, it's been said once, I think possibly by Benjamin Franklin, that a democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting what's for dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And so you get the idea. So popular vote wins. So if we don't like the purple people over there with pink polka dots, and as long as we get just slightly over the half of the nation that's against the purple people with pink polka dots, then we can vote against them and we can remove them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how democracy basically works. And some people would argue with that, but that is the essence of it. I mean, the popular vote wins. Now, the idea of a republic is where you have a basic set of fundamental laws that apply to all and protect all, right? And we have largely lost the idea of a republic in this country. And so, and it's being shifted into this idea of a democracy. And now many of our rights are being challenged now, namely the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, because those things stand in the way, you know, like, for example, free speech, you know, the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, also stands in the way of totalitarian power. Many of these things that give us the right to a speedy trial, the right to not incriminate ourselves, you know, like the Fifth Amendment.
So I wanted to tell you about I had it on here. Now I messed it up. Anyways, it was the Damien Hirst treasure from the wreck of, and I have to wait now, the wreck of the Unbelievable, presented by Henny Talks. This is a ship that went down. It was this huge ship, and it had nothing but the gods from all around the world. So you have the Medusa, you have this great big shiny disc, which they said it was like a ton, and it was the sun. And I think they got it somewhere from like overseas, maybe, I don't know, towards Egypt maybe. Anyways, there was gods from all over, and their gods, and you should see what they pull out of the water. It's unbelievable. I think there's, anyways, they're on display in a museum somewhere, but they show one by one coming up. It's amazing.
I saw some of that. That was they did a National Geographic on it. There's, when you're diving down underneath there's literally these statues, some of them standing erect, mm-hmm. and they're magnificent looking.
I forgot to say the most important thing. You remember we were talking about Mickey Mouse? There is a god, well, one of their gods, that looked just like Mickey Mouse.
And that actually is something I heard you say the other day. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting. And now they've made it a kids cartoon where the little children can sit and watch, and it's so much fun. That's a great example of esoteric right there. That is a fantastic example of that, because now you're getting the little children to love something that, isn't it funny too? We spoke about this a little bit last Wednesday about the Krampus, and some of that stuff. Now they bear a striking resemblance to the god Baphomet.
Oh.
A lot of those, with the horns and stuff. They've got a statue of that somewhere. I think it might be German.
I thought maybe the scapegoat.
Well, that's another
goat that escaped with the sins.
Yeah. Well, and that's another one of those symbols. The goat of Menendez. They take it and they use it for a satanic symbol. The goat was actually a representation of Satan in the Old Testament when they would lay the final sins, and that's where some of the confusion of some of the listeners that came on Prophecy Montana were having a hard time with. There was a group of about 5 people that just joined us overnight and just would harass everybody in the comments. And I finally nuked them. I just got rid of them. I mean, they were just obnoxious. Yeah, they just would argue and jeer everybody and say the same thing over and over again. And one of their issues was the scapegoat, and how we said that the scapegoat represented Satan, and they were saying it represented Christ, which I think was a gross misunderstanding, because at the end, now Christ bore the sins of the world. Okay, he's the lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. But in the end, the scapegoat takes all of the blame, if you will, and is placed on him. He's the root cause of everything, and he's sent out into the wilderness, right, to perish. And that's exactly, that's a very fitting description of the ultimate end of Satan, is that he'll be sent out into the wilderness. He'll ultimately be destroyed by fire, but you get the point.
Yeah,
so
unquenchable.
Yeah, it's an unquenchable fire. But I believe, I'm in the camp, and we've spoke about this many times, that Donald Trump is in on this esoteric societies. Some have suggested that he might be a Knights Templar, and I just learned tonight that a Knights Templar were one of the societies that guarded the temple in Jerusalem. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there's a more nefarious means to all of this guarding of the so-called temple.
Didn't you ever watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, Carrie?
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. That there was a lot of symbolism in that too. And I was just, did you send that to me about the putting spells in music? Did you send that to me on Facebook? I should have reposted it. It was there was this individual that used to work. He was a famous musician, but his face was all painted. So I didn't know which group he was. One of these modern groups. And I could tell you who KISS is and AC/DC and all of those groups, right? Mm-hmm. Those were back in the 80s when we were, teenagers. Mm-hmm. But these new groups, I don't understand the music. I don't know who they are. They seem to come and go as fast as, they're just popping up left and right. But this guy was a famous musician, semi-famous or pseudo-famous, who knows, and he practiced putting spells in his music. And he said he can see the spells when songs are sung, that we're talking like modern secular music, that it is very common for them to put spells into the music.
Oh, boy.
I know. And so that's why it's so very important. And
we're supposed to gird up our senses, our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our hearing, everything. We got to be careful, because there's only one of you, and you got to be careful of yourself and be aware. And there's so much out there, so much. I learned about karate, or the martial arts, how they keep going up the line in different colors of belts, and then they finally find out what it's about.
Yeah, the famous martial artist, he was on Amazing Discoveries years ago. He, famous in the world of martial arts. Nobody knows him except if you're in martial arts, you would know who he is. But he came out of it all. But he found out what the highest level of martial arts was. And it was interesting that it included rock and roll and alcohol and tobacco, of all things. And so
The ATF. Just kidding.
the ATF was involved, Lisa.
Okay. They're involved in everything.
Seems like it. Well, maybe Trump will get rid of them. So he was led ultimately to believe that it was the spirits that would guide the martial artist. And you see some of this in the Chinese version of martial arts with their chi. You've heard of chi.
Yeah.
That's the inner force. And some of these other things that you see in the Asian world. Well, now you're seeing them in the Western worlds too. They're very much applicable. I mean, well, we've borrowed so much from those religions and those societies.
You know, I hate the cap on this part because I know I'll probably spark something. But just like football and fighting, I mean, my brother went all the way up to, he was going up into the ranks, into the Olympics, but he lost. So he didn't get to go into the Olympics. His name was Hatchet Jack. So we grew up with boxing. We even learned how to shadow box and do all that kind of stuff. But anyways, and I would go jogging with my brother for miles. It was fun. But the point is, when I was watching The Unbelievable, it's like different stuff around the world. Like, is it true or not? Or why is it there? Like the Winchester House, different things like that. Anyways, he was talking about boxing and what's that other one where they wrestle and box?
MMA,
MMA,
UFC.
UFC.
Yeah.
Ooh, my sister's calling me, and she does it every time. Anyways, so she said, or he was talking, interviewing people, and they were like, in these different sports, they break out in fights every single time. And so you have in the boxing world, it gets a little carried away, and everyone's like, hit him, and you know, their whole face is like, they get so involved. Or like in the basketball realm, you know, and the football, any of those rowdier games that, you know, people are really, really into it and they're ready to fight for. And then it showed these, well, they're not, I'm not going to call them old, but they're watching tennis. And so they're going like this, and the ball's like pong, 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 pong. Everyone is calm, and they're in pastel colors. They're there, you know, in the sun. And it's just way different from the boxing or from that kind of world to the other kind of sport. And where did the sports come from anyways?
Oh, probably Greece.
Probably Greece.
Yeah, the games. They had the Colosseums. That was very popular. Now, Mary says that, and this is a very interesting comment. I didn't know this about Mary. But as we get to know each other a little bit more, we become closer because we have more that we can relate to with one another. But she says the love of my life up until about 3 or so years ago was the world of Harry Potter. Then the Holy Spirit spoke to me, and that was the end of that. But I was involved for years. And she says, that's how I met my husband. We were both in the Harry Potter club. And then she says, come out of her, my people. And that is such an important statement right there, because we're told in Revelation to come out of Babylon. And that's one of the commands that God's people are given in these last days, is to come out of Babylon. And Babylon is that system of worship years ago that has pervaded so many different avenues of modern living today. It's in everything. And so God's not trying to take the fun away from us. He's not trying to take all our fun away. He's trying to actually lead us out of corruption and into holiness, into holy living. And that's for our own good. Holy living brings peace and joy that surpasses all understanding, especially.
It takes away like your aches and pains and confusion. And Ellen G. White says it's always awesome it's like therapeutic to go in a garden and smell that fresh dirt. I mean, I was feeding my chickens the worms. Of course, Carrie got mad, but that was kind of fun. Planting potatoes and giving them big, juicy, night crawlers. But it's fun. At first, I didn't want to do it, but because I don't like being on my knees in the dirt. But after that, you see the reward of your garden, and it's really satisfying.
Very true. And Babylon is something that that we're so familiar with on a daily basis that it's even crept into our churches. And when we go to church and we think that we're worshiping God according to the Bible, many of us are finding out that it's not at all the proper worship. And God is particular on worship. Now, he winks at ignorance, okay? We know this from the past peoples. We know this even from King David. He didn't even know how to properly carry the ark of God. He had to go back to the Bible and learn. When the priest went up and touched the cart or was going to readjust the ark on that cart when they got it back from the Philistines, was it? And so, or am I mixing up two stories in the Bible? Anyways, I think the same thing happened when David had the ark as well.
You said if he got hemorrhoids, it's the same story. Because then he gets zapped, and then the ark got stolen, and then
brought back.
They got hemorrhoids and they brought it back.
They put it on a brand new car. Now here's an example of the winking at the ignorance.
Okay.
The Philistines put it on a brand new ark. They knew it was important, right? So they did the best they could with what they had. They put it on a brand new cart that nothing was ever carried in, and they bore the brand new cart with oxen that had never towed anything before. So they subscribed to holiness to it, and God respected that. That's not how he wanted it done. Israel knew better, and if they would have violated that in any way, shape, or form, they would have immediately gained retribution for it. But these Philistines got away with it when they sent it back, and that was a very interesting part of that. So, Mary says, I was very involved in black. Didn't like bright colors and didn't like being around religious people, especially SDAs. Okay. And I was born and raised SDA home. I'm actually third generation SDA.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's very curious. Most heathen gods started with Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter against the Lord and the builder of Babel. He was known as Osiris and Egypt. He was defiant against God, and this was, I think she's going to continue that. This was with, we'll wait for her other response. That's correct. And these belief systems, I believe, came directly from Satan. Now, it was asked when Little Light Studios interviewed Walter Veith, because I was watching that too, that why not pick something totally different? Why did they have to mimic the Bible so closely? Like all of the, I mean, there's sacrifices in Satanism, right? But they don't sacrifice a lamb. They sacrifice other things.
Children. Babies.
Well, let's not say too much because YouTube's listening. But I mean, there's lots of stuff. I mean, well, in the Roman times, it was unclean animals.
Oh, yeah.
That was a very popular thing to sacrifice the unclean animals to their gods. And so this was all kind of borrowed from Christianity by Satan. Now, the war is against Jesus, right? That's who Satan's angry with, is Jesus. Jesus is the creator of the worlds. He's the redeemer of mankind. He's the creator of mankind. And mankind in particular was created in God's image. And Satan doesn't like this the idea that we're created in his image. I don't know what part of us is created in his image. Many have said our likeness.
He said our likeness.
Yeah, perhaps our likeness. I mean, God, it looks like us, or rather we look like him, right?
Right.
And so, and I've thought about this. Okay, now here's something to think about. You know, God created all of the different colors of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of the different, you know, ways we look.
Red and yellow, black and white.
Yep, exactly. Just like the child's song. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that God the Father, now here's my mind working, it's not in the Bible, it's just crazy Carrie thinking of crazy things again. But when you look at God, he's described as having like an appearance, like his feet were of burning brass and
his eyes were red.
Yeah, and it describes all these different things. But as your eyes adjust to because the holy beings, as holy beings, will be able to look at God's face, which we cannot do now. But as we look into God's face, will we see, have you ever seen those cars that as they're driving down the road, you see different colors depending on what angle they're at? You know what I'm saying? Will God exhibit all the colors? Are we just each and a little bit of an expression of God? Are you kind of following what I'm getting at? Because if we're made in his image, so you're red, I'm red, different shades of red. Aren't you a redskin?
Yes.
Okay, that's probably politically incorrect. I'm probably going to get banned for that one. But you're Native American.
I'll beat him off the when we get done here.
You smack me around. She'll bring out her tomahawk. I'll be sorry I said anything.
He'll hear the drums upstairs.
The war drums.
The war
paint
drums.
on your face.
The ashes.
Oh, I hear a rain stick. I'm in trouble now. No, but really, you know, and we're all created all these different colors, right? Mm-hmm. And is God like a whatever. I don't want to get too deep.
Drop it, Carrie. Just keep it on the Bible.
Okay, you're right. So anyways, all right, back to topic. So so that's why Luke 22, 31 to 32 makes me cry. I take that verse for myself too. Let's look that up. We haven't looked the Bible verse up yet.
Sure. I have a real Bible, though. So what was it, Luke?
Yeah, it's Luke 22. Yeah, definitely. If you get that before I do. P. Grant says, oh, golly. Probably referring to that tomahawk you threatened me with. Okay, so Luke 22. And then it's verse 31 and 32.
31 and 32.
Okay. And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. Wow. So that's when that was can you imagine having Jesus praying for you?
I know. I was just reading that.
Can you imagine? That would be something.
You know, I mean, that would just be incredible. He doesn't he? Well, he accepts our prayers right now, right?
Yeah.
But does he pray over our world?
That's such a good question. He prayed over Jerusalem. I mean, he was seen praying many times. Mm-hmm. That is a really good question because
pray up to the time.
Yeah.
The angels start loosening the ties of strife.
Loosening the winds of strife.
Winds of strife,
yeah. Yeah. Watchman. Hey, I knew we were missing somebody. Judas didn't really have a choice. It was part of prophecy, so I would never try to say that he's in hell. It's only God that knows where he is. Yeah. Okay? And so, yeah, sure. we've actually talked about that before a little bit, Watchman, And that's a curious angle, because I've always been taught from my youth that he's pretty much lost, right, because of his choices and what he's done. Your angle's hitting it a little bit different, where you're kind of coming at it from, he was one of the chosen disciples. But now, didn't Jesus say that he had chosen 12? But where was that verse, guys? That but one, except for one, or something like to that effect. I have saved all but one. Where's that verse, guys? You guys are smart. You would know where that's at. Watchman says, some headlines: Trump to cut $1 billion from school lunch program and food bank program. Interesting. Food of all things, huh? I'm sure he's trying to save some money. Ukrainian 30-day peace, pause an oxymoron by definition that they would think Russia would allow them to return and gain intelligence. Yeah, that wouldn't be a good tactical move, would it, necessarily? But I know that the Russians and the Ukrainians both do want peace. It's their leaders. And I've even heard that Zelensky, and I got to be careful, okay, because we talk about war on here and that'll get me popped, but I'll just make this brief. But I heard that it's kind of like during wartime, there's a lot of laws that are imposed upon people that aren't necessarily imposed without, And so, and again, I think it's more of a battle over currency than anything. You can follow all the wars and they all go back to money, which again brings us back to our original subject matter. And that's how I think that many people, especially Trump, are in on this king of the North, king of the South thing, where they appear to oppose one another, but they are in fact in bed for a bigger plan. Now, Satan's government is not perfect. It's very flawed. There's dissension amongst his troops, if you will, amongst his generals, and they don't agree with one another, and they're always bickering and they're always fighting. They're always vying for supremacy. And this is the breakdown of Satan's system, as I started to mention earlier. Yeah, their allegiance isn't really allegiance. It's more like a game of Survivor. I don't know if you guys have watched that, but it's basically just showcases man's evil intentions to climb to the top, where they'll throw anybody under the bus to get what they need to get, and it doesn't matter who they step on to do it. And so that's what we're looking at. And we're looking at...
It's a strategy.
It is. It's a strategy game, and they're all playing it against one another. And these are intelligent beings, make no mistake about it. They're intelligent, sentient beings that are battling for the different positions. Carrie, cutting school lunch and food banks is the wrong way to save money. Oh, I agree 100%. Sorry, typo, and it won't let me retract. Judas showed regret. He gave the silver coins back and committed suicide.
See that he was remorseful.
He was remorseful. The only detail that really kind of excluded him in that, to me, okay, now I'm not the judge, but the one detail that did exclude him was the fact that he didn't go to Jesus and repent to Jesus, okay, like Peter did. Peter and Judas made similar mistakes, right? They both, Judas's was a little bit more calculated. He started.
I think he thought that he was going to help Jesus take over and be the king that he said he was supposed to be.
I think that's how it says it in Desire of Ages. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the root of most all evil, and Thomas Berry has joined us, or has been with us. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Tom.
Nice to have you guys here. He's talking about money, of course. The love of money is the root of all evil, mm-hmm. Watchman says. And so you can usually follow the money. It's usually money, power, those types of things that motivate people. And that's what the devil puts in front of people to get him to do his bidding. But of course, the game that the devil's playing is much bigger, right? It's about worship. It's about control, really, right? Mm-hmm. And it was mentioned on that Little Light Studios podcast earlier that I was watching, that you had introduced me to. I'd watched them before, but I didn't know they had a podcast. Mm. But he had said that he thinks that Satan's aim is to convert every single last person here into hedonism or heathenism or Satanism. Doesn't matter which group, right?
Or comatosis.
Yeah, a drug or an alcohol-induced comatose.
Yeah.
Well, for real. I mean, that's another one of the deceptions. Alcohol is called spirits for a reason, right? We talked about that last week, in some detail, and the effects of drugs and alcohol. Well, we didn't really talk about the effects of drugs and alcohol, did we? We just talked about the moral choice to use them or not to use them, and the different scenarios where it would be okay versus not be okay. And it's almost always not okay to use drugs and alcohol. But it's only under extreme circumstances that the Bible allows the use of alcohol, whether someone's dying and in pain or something like that. So under, extreme circumstances only. Whereas we have medicated ourselves almost completely to death with drugs and alcohol. Watchman asks, did Judas believe in Jesus?
I think he did. He obviously did, because he thought he was going to help him come out and become this king that he said he was.
When Peter denied Jesus 3 times, did he believe?
I think so. Yes.
I think he believed. I think he was scared. I think that he wasn't fully converted, and he cracked under pressure, which he later wouldn't crack under pressure. He held up.
Wasn't he protecting Jesus from getting taken?
Well, no. That was the sword incident.
The sword, yeah, with the ear.
With the ear, yeah. But then later he denied him.
But he did that out of fear for his own life.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas Judas, I think, was more. Now, he was sorry for what he did, but the outcome wasn't what he. I don't know. It's a great topic. I'd like to actually talk about it in more detail.
And I was looking at the coin thing. Remember the other incident with Magdalene? No, not Mary Magdalene. The one that grew his hair. What was his name?
Oh, Absalom?
No.
Samson
and Delilah.
Yeah.
Remember, she got the money too, and then she didn't want it.
Oh, that's right. He was sold for silver. Mm-hmm. And he was actually a type of Christ. If you look, he died with his arms stretched out. Many similarities. He was a judge in Israel.
They didn't realize it was his hair, or maybe they were just not aware of his hair growing.
Yeah, it was the hair, but the hair was symbolic of the covenant that he had made with God for his strength. And I don't know what the hair has anything to do with it, but
I'm growing mine, but I'm not strong enough yet. So
we're gonna arm wrestle.
No.
Chicken. I don't know. She's pretty powerful. One day she lifted this. What was it? It was an Air Force desk that we got from our next door neighbor who was part of this military. And this thing was gigantic, and it took like 3 guys to take it off the back of the truck. And we parked it downstairs, and she wanted it all the way up the stairs. He wanted it at the top. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. Why do you pick the hardest place to put this thing? So I was procrastinating. I put it off, and the days would go by, and Lisa was getting more and more perturbed with me. And finally I came home, and it was gone. And I'm like, where's the chest? She goes, it's at the top of the stairs. I'm like, how in the world did you get it up there? I mean, who helped you? She goes, I did it all by myself. Remember that?
Yeah. One time I needed a refrigerator. I pulled this refrigerator onto the back of your truck, and your truck had one of those frames so that you could put lumber or pipe. I think you're fitting pipe then. And I had to kind of scoop it underneath it. But I got it.
Powerful woman.
I could put anything in the vehicles and couches.
It's your pure determination, I think, that does it.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, you're just gonna do something, and nobody's gonna tell you no.
No. No.
Nothing will stand in your way.
I can't have it. Well, it's in the back of the car. You got to get it now.
That's awesome. All right. Let me see here. Watchman says, Revelation 20:12, God knows what we do, and he will let us know in the end where to stand. Can you look that up, Lisa? Revelation 22. Watchman says, Peter was lukewarm, but by denying Jesus 3 times, wouldn't you think? Oh, I would think he wasn't fully converted for sure. He definitely was not. I mean, even Jesus said in Luke 22 there that Mary gave us. Mary says, way to go, Lisa. Laughy face. We don't have the monitor up here yet. I got to get that up there so she can see the comments too.
Oh, so Revelation 22 what?
Trish says, that's very inspiring, Lisa. Oh, okay. Revelation, let me look back. Revelation 20:12.
You said 22. So it's 20:12.
Yeah. Chapter 20, verse 12.
Okay. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the book according to their works.
Mm.
That's their character. It's their character.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing we'll take to heaven with us is our character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing else counts. Not our money, not our things, not what we've done. Well, kind of what we've done. Whether we're working for the Lord or working for the devil, it's going to be one of two. Mm-hmm. And maybe next week we'll talk about sanctification a little bit, because I think that's an important topic too that a lot of people don't understand. Justification, sanctification, glorification, those 3 things. You know, it's one of those topics that
I want to learn how to be saved. Like how to go to heaven. I know you can read your Bible and you can help people across the street and maybe bake a cake and take it to a neighbor. I don't know. And I'm up there singing. I'm trying to do the podcast even though I don't like to be filmed. I look retarded. And I have issues, like that, but I really am trying. And I really do try. But what gets you into heaven?
Jesus. Literally just Jesus.
Forgiving, asking God for forgiveness every day?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, taking hold of Christ, like literally taking hold of him and following him around, just like the disciples did.
Praying for people?
That's part of it. Well, I mean, whatever Jesus does, we do. Mm-hmm. We just mimic our Father. And he becomes our Father by proxy. You know, we become what we behold. Now, some people think there's levels to salvation. I don't. I think you're saved, and that's, and everything
Don't
after.
Say saved, once saved.
No, I almost
Always
did though, huh?
Saved. Yeah.
Well, there is some guarantees that God gives us that once he started a work in us, that he'll finish it until the day of salvation, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about what he does for us. Now, some people have perverted that and made it into like, well, then we don't need to keep God's law, right? But there's more to it than that, actually. Because keeping God's law signifies who we belong to. It signifies the relationship that we have with our Father. Now, we don't immediately, when we cry out to God, we don't immediately begin to keep his law. As you know, I mean, it was a struggle, right? I mean, years and years of sin that has plagued us, that is hanging on to us into these old dead bodies of ours, that it takes time. But God just doesn't wait until we're at a certain point to save us of our sanctification. He saved us from day one when we cried out to him, just like the widow who grabbed his garment. She says, if I could but touch the hem of his garment, I would be made whole. That is such a huge lesson for us. Mary Magdalene is a symbol for the church, I believe. Mm-hmm. When she was tossed at Jesus' feet by her accusers, The accusers is representative of the devil. They took the church, i.e. Mary, and they threw her at Jesus' feet and said, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act.
Yeah, it was probably set up.
Well, yeah, I most certainly.
It was probably one of those men that were there.
I wouldn't doubt it, and that's why Jesus wrote in their sins. Now,
in the sand.
In the sand. Now he writes the law on stone. He writes our sins in the dirt. Mm-hmm. Praise the Lord, right?
And the dirt is easily blown away.
Yeah, washed away.
Mm-hmm.
So when she was thrown at Jesus' feet, I mean, she was a mess. She was condemned. The leaders rightfully said that the law states that she should be stoned. Now, were they wrong?
No, they probably weren't wrong.
They were right, huh? They were 100% right.
That was the law.
That was the law.
In that area, yeah.
The law states that if a man sins, he shall die.
The wages of sin is death.
Is death. But they forgot who they're throwing the woman in front of.
But you're actually dying of self, not literally falling off of a building or something.
And listen, when we're condemned by the law, then the law bears down upon us and destroys us. But when Jesus fulfills the penalty of the law by dying on the cross, he removes the penalty of sin from us. Mm-hmm. And now we become champions of the law. We uphold the law. This is not an overnight process. It takes, sometimes the conversions for some people are quicker than others. Many years it's taken us, and we're still very far away from anything perfect. Mm-hmm. But each day is a step closer. And as long as we stay there, now it's Jesus that makes us righteous. He's the one that puts the robe on us, just like the symbology in the Bible is given to us, the stories to help us to understand salvation and how it works. When the son wanted his inheritance and left his father, the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son, he went away and he spent his inheritance on riotous living. And in the very last, he was seen with the swine. And this was a terrible place for anybody to be in Jewish culture because the swine were unclean, right? Mm. And he was eating with the swine. So he was in this absolute mess of a place. And so the servant in his head, or the son, not the servant, the son in his head thought, if I could just go home with my father, I will entreat him to be a servant. For even the servants of my Lord have it better than I do now. So he came back with the intentions not to be reinstated as a son, but just as a servant. I mean, he was hoping against all hope. He didn't know the whole time that his father was sitting out there the entire time he was gone, waiting for him each and every day to return. And when his father saw him from afar off, he ran and he put that robe around him. That's very significant. That robe is literally the robe of righteousness. He covered his son with the robe of righteousness. He put the ring on his finger, which signified that he was heir to his kingdom, mm-hmm. that this was an actual son that was to be identified by all of the servants as his son. And then he brought him in and he threw a great feast.
But the other brother was jealous.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So what did that son do to gain anything? All he really did is, he
figured out that the world is very hard.
Yeah, that's right. He did.
Maybe he lost touch. He went into the world, Then when he came back to Jesus. See, maybe.
Well, that's okay. So when we come to Jesus, we've made a mess out of our lives. Mm-hmm. We've lost our inheritance. We've sold it like Esau did to Jacob, right? Did he not sell his inheritance?
Yeah, for a pot of beans.
Yeah.
Or porridge.
Porridge or pulse or whatever it was that he had there that smelled really good.
That pulse everyone was trying to make us buy.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But so literally the grace of this great king mm-hmm. was all it was that took his son back. And so all these stories, we have the story of Abraham when he brought his son up on the mount to go slay his son. Now, technically, Abraham had committed sins, right? And so he was condemned. But it was this great demonstration that he was about to
It's that faith.
unfold before the world. Yeah, he had great faith to do that, huh?
Faith to get rid of, to even hurt, let alone kill his own son.
That's right.
Ugh,
But he kind of somehow knew that something else was going to, because his son asked him, Father.
But I don't know. He was in midair coming down.
Well, that's the faith that you were talking about.
Well, that went up and beyond. Usually is a point, not when you're both hands on the knife coming down.
I think in Patriarchs and Prophets, I could be wrong, but I think she says that he actually believed that God would resurrect his son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so somehow he knew there was going to be a way. Because the son said, Father, behold the wood, but where's the sacrifice? And his father answered, God will provide one. And so
just lay down.
well, that was the instruction. The son knew what was going on too.
He did.
And
he
so
figured it out.
But that demonstration was a perfect demonstration. There was a sermon years ago, Who Killed God? I loved that sermon. It stuck with me all these years. Did the Jews kill him, and did the Romans kill him? He hung on a Roman cross. Did we kill him? The answer was actually quite fascinating, and that God himself killed his own son.
Because he recognized the sin in him.
That's right.
Saw the sin that he had upon him, and that's all of our sins.
There you go.
From the present to the past, every sin in the world was in him at that time, because he's already died for your sins. So we're on the other side of the coin. Yeah, that was interesting.
So if he's died for Lisa's sin, that means Lisa doesn't have to die for her sins.
I don't have to.
That's right.
If I don't hold on to Jesus, I will die of my sins.
For your own sins, that's correct. What a waste, though, because Jesus has already died for them.
They're already bought. I'm already bought.
You're already bought and paid for. Yeah. What a wonderful promise. The gospel is such a great message because it's unlike any other thing that we've ever been taught in this world. That grace is king when it comes to Jesus. The grace is unmerited favor. Thomas, I haven't been reading you guys' comments. I got on that little thing. I'm quite passionate about the whole gospel story. In Paul's letters, he says, grace and peace be with you all over and over again. That's a big theme, right? With Paul. Now, Paul would understand grace more than anything because he was a murderer of Christians. And here God chose him to write the New Testament.
Paul was Saul, huh?
Yes, formerly Saul.
Wasn't he kind of blind?
Yeah, that was part of his experience there on the road to Emmaus.
I guess we'll go maimed, whatever it takes just to make it.
Yeah,
keep that faith.
If thy eye offend thee, if thy hand offend thee, not to say that we gouge our eyes out and cut our hands off, but it's those things. Like if you're addicted to porn, and every time you get on your cell phone, you're tempted to go to that, then you need to put your cell phone down. That's what it's talking about, literally, right?
Turn do something other than.
Yeah. Get rid of the temptation that's linking you with sin. That's literally what that means.
We were talking about music earlier. That classic rock.
Oh yeah.
I would listen to it, and 4 o'clock would roll around, 3:30 or whatever, and it was Miller time. That music was the one that spurred everything off.
That connected you with your alcohol.
Yep, and I had I chewed tobacco. I don't want to even say it.
You begged me not to say that right online. Well,
I chewed tobacco. I'm really lucky I didn't get any any kind of cancer in my mouth and stuff. But I've always chewed tobacco since I can remember. And then all of a sudden in the afternoon, it would be cigarettes and alcohol. So it was coffee, like an overabundance of coffee. And then it was, later on it was beer. And it was a really hard because I had so much to overcome. Because the moment I woke up, I had to have so much coffee. And that's just where I was at. And it wasn't just a few cups. I would go through a huge can in 1 week. I did. I had to have like 24 cups.
Yeah.
And yeah, just these habits that I had. And it was always with the movies and always with the music and always, I was just riddled full of, and like I said, when I had given up everything, it was one of the hardest things. I never want to do it again. I never want to go back to have to break that again. So.
Yeah, my experience with quitting chewing tobacco was quite epic.
Why did we get into that anyways? Just
well,
our town.
It was cool to do it.
And all the women in our era were from the 70s. The hippie era, the remnant of the hippies having hippie kids. That's, and then when you're in your high school age or when you're growing up, we were in a western town, so, and I think I was just really into the country music and the Wranglers and the long hair and the
big belt buckle,
big giant belt buckle and all that kind of stuff.
And if you didn't have that little round wore out spot on the back of your jeans, you weren't cool.
That's for the guys to do.
So you had to have that can of Copenhagen back there. So Mary said, I want to read her comment. She says, I used to celebrity worship in a huge way. One of my big time idols were the Beatles, especially the White Album Revolver, but actually all of their songs. I think keeping the good fight, Watchman says, is important as long as we are fighting and haven't become seared with the hot iron to do not deny God's power.
Amen. I like that.
Mary says she's tossed away all her idols and she's free. OE has joined us. He says, retype the title, because we're talking about, well, the first part was all about that. And then we've kind of progressed into,
kind of veered off.
We kind of veered off.
We're like a car going down the road, one way and the other way and the other way. We never stay in one place. Like Walter Wyatt, those seasoned spokespersons, that they know what they're going to say. They've got one of those, where they bringing up all the literature and all that kind of stuff. And what's that called again? Point. The point wherever, anyways.
Like bullet points or something?
No, or
like the topic?
The topic, but they have it's called point something or other. Where they're bringing up they have it all in line, what they're going to say and what they're going to talk about.
So, Watchman says, look at what Hollywood is up to. Sorry, guys, I get distracted with all these little buttons and stuff. Look at what Hollywood is up to look how they've been promoting this wicked play. Okay. And did I mention, I know this is another off topic, but like Uncle Pappy and.
Oh yeah. Carrie's been obsessed with Uncle
No,
Pappy.
I'm not obsessed with Uncle Pappy.
He thinks he's Robin Williams.
Well, no, I know he's Robin Williams.
Oh, okay.
I straight up know he is. Uncle Pappy, check him out on TikTok. It's interesting because what I think is these celebrities fake their deaths a lot of times. And they, Dave, Michael Jackson, there's a bunch of these things going on. Watchman is going to agree with me. He will. He's right on board with what I'm saying. I know he is. But the point is, whether they do or don't fake their deaths, okay, that's irrelevant. But I know in the past there has actually been celebrities that have been caught faking their death, okay? and it was a crime punishable, federally. Anyways, the point is this, is that these people know powerful people. If they're doing this stuff, they know powerful people, and they live in powerful circles, and they're able to pull this stuff off, right?
Mm.
Talking points.
Talking points, that's it.
That's the one you were trying to come up with. P. Gran. You can thank P. Gran for that one.
Thank you.
I had the huge chains like Ebenezer Scrooge in that scene in Hell, laugh out loud, Albert Finney version. The huge chains. Mm-hmm. I've never watched the Harry Potter series, so.
Oh, Harry Potter. Yeah.
No, that was Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah, I was going to say that's different.
Mm-hmm. That's a different one. In the scene, Hell. Okay, Albert Finney version. Yeah.
I've watched those all. So
it's funny. I mean, the first time I heard about this stuff was actually from Ivor Myers. He started talking about this in our church when he, began to talk about the stars and where the stars came from. And he kind of coined it like he was talking to God and God was answering him. So he said, he prayed and he said, where did these stars come from? And God pointed them to Hollywood. Now you look at, the stars that fell from heaven.
Yeah.
And so the stars fell from heaven, went straight to Hollywood. It's interesting. They call movie stars. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they've all got demons prescribed to them. Isn't that scary?
It's horrifying.
And then the Pope was warding off or speaking to demons when he was sick.
Oh, was that recently?
Recently.
Yeah. That's crazy.
That was reported by a UK news organization there, a news organization there in the UK. So I thought that was interesting.
I watched this one True Live where they were taking the trash man, which was a schooner up the coast and around South Carolina. It went down, and they were doing the Mayday, and they were all drinking on this trash man schooner, and it flipped, and they all made it to a raft, but one of the young girls had been seriously hurt, and then they said it was really windy and the waves were lapping in their mouth and they couldn't even hardly breathe, so they put the boat over top of them. It was just a rubber boat, and just to keep the wind off of them so that the waves wouldn't be going in their face. So one of them felt a bump and realized there was something else in the water right around him, which was hundreds, if not thousands, of sharks all around him. And that girl's bleeding. So they flip the boat. They all get in. And her boyfriend and the other guy drank ocean water, and they actually jumped off the boat. The girl that was hurt was going into some sort of sepsis. She was gonna die. She was that hurt, and she was getting sicker and sicker and delusional. But she started moving her hands, they said, and talking a really weird language. And she said, all I can think of, because she's not religious, was that she thought maybe she was demon possessed or really out of her mind. When she passed away, they threw her overboard, and another thing, all these sharks were all around their boat, never left them. And when those other guys jumped off, they were devoured immediately. When that girl was thrown out, she was devoured immediately. And then they saw this Russian ship that came by, and they didn't want to be in that boat because now there's all kinds of liquids in there and stuff. So she just jumps out. The other woman jumps out, and then the other guy that was in there with her, because they're watching everything happening, he jumps out. He's like, "Don't leave me." And what about the sharks? But for some reason there was no more sharks, and they swam to that ship. I mean, unbelievable, huh? And what I'm trying to say is I think certain people do have demons in them and they don't realize it. That they
Lisa, that was positively horrifying.
it was but it was true.
I know not everything's true is edifying. That was horrible. I was waiting for.
I'm trying to make a point out of it too. I don't know how to do it.
You'll get better with it. You'll get better. Okay, so Trish in Progress says something here I wanted to kind of respond to. She says it at Mary, but she said, have you heard about people having blackouts and not remembering Taylor Swift concerts? Okay. No, I haven't heard about that in particular. Mary says, no, I haven't. But I have. And I'll tell you where I heard it. It was a documentary done on subliminal messaging, okay? And yeah, and so the documentary covered a broad spectrum.
That spell thing. No?
I'm trying to think if that was in there or not.
About the spells.
Yeah, the spell, but I don't think the documentary touched on spells. It was very analytical in its I mean, it was more what you call it? I can't think of the word. But anyways, it was a documentary on subliminal messaging, right? And so they brought this guy into this well, he was a psychiatrist or whatever, and he understood the human mind. And he said behind camera that, behind scenes, that he was going to talk this man into buying his son a bicycle. Okay, here's how it's done. The guy is unsuspecting, but he knows he's a part of an experiment, but he's unsuspecting about what the topic or what they're doing is actually. And so they bring the guy in, they sit down at a table, and he starts to talk to him, and they're putting the words up on the screen because if they didn't, you'd miss him. And he asks him what he's going to buy his son for Christmas. And so he says, okay, I want you to write it down. Okay, he writes it down, put it on the table. And they're talking, and he's interjecting these words that seemingly sounds senseless, right? Mm-hmm. Christian Love says, thank you, Lisa, for the bedtime story.
I should have just had the lights off and a flashlight up on my face.
Yeah, that's campfire stuff right there, man. So he's talking to this guy. Their words are popping up on there, and they're nonsensical. But this guy somehow put bicycle in his mind. He says, now I want you to rewrite what you just wrote on a piece of paper a minute ago on what you're going to buy your son for Christmas. So he writes it down, he puts it down. So then they tell the man what the experiment was, right? And they go through that whole thing. Okay, so here's what we've actually done, and he says, I want you to turn over your first piece of paper. The guy turned his first piece of paper over, and it said, I don't know, something, right? It was like a toy truck or something. And then he says, okay, now turn the other piece of paper over, and it was a bicycle.
Wow.
And this guy thought he wrote bicycle on the first one. That's how powerful some of these subliminal messages. Now, they don't work on everybody all the time, right? This isn't like a guaranteed thing, but there are a group of people, a large group of people, and it's getting larger all the time because our minds are more and more suggestive because we watch so much TV, we listen to so much music, we play so many video games, that the suggestibility of our minds is increasing all the time, right? And so they can put these suggestions in our head and they become part of our own thinking. Now, subliminal messaging has been around a long, long time. So part of this documentary is where they brought these people into the movie theater, and they said, when you leave this movie theater, you will not remember a thing.
No.
That's what they told them going into the movie theater. Said, you'll watch this short little movie. It's, 15 minutes long. You will walk out the other side, and we're going to question you. And I'm telling you now, you will not remember. Oh, I will remember, they say. I will make a point of remembering. Mm-hmm. You will see. I will easily remember this. No problem. They all walk in. There was 30 or 40 of them. Out of that 30 or 40 people, there was one or two that actually remembered anything about the movie. Every single person that was walking out of there, they're like, okay. And they'd even forgot why they were there, most of them. And they the guy was waiting at the door. Okay, now tell me what the movie's about. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot the whole
And they're
thing.
doing that to us?
And she's talking about these concerts where people are blacking out and not remember the concerts.
Carrie, that's morbid.
Oh. Listen, it's the power of what? Listen, when we put ourselves under Satan's control, we're in dangerous grounds. And we don't realize how dangerous it is. When we're watching the TV, Ellen White made a statement years ago in one of her books. I believe it's a great controversy. She's talking about mesmerism. Now, mesmerism's, if you know anything about hypnotism, Mesmer, forget his first name, he was the one that actually came up with the hypnotism, right? To kind of discover it. And he was hypnotizing people, and it was coined to be mesmerized. We've all heard that, right? To be mesmerized. That's the old way of saying hypnotized. Now people use it to quit smoking. They use it to, reveal, locked emotions and memories and different things. Well, it's used in the entertainment industry, the music and the TV and stuff. If you look at a TV, if you drive by houses at night, do this just for fun. Or, when you're going for a walk on the sidewalks or something, look inside people's houses. You'll see that TV flashing.
Oh, I see it when I'm driving.
And it's just doing this business, the whole time. And just watching the flashing from outside, it's kind of almost hypnotic. But you put all that other elements in it that they're doing, and they're actually interjecting things into your mind that you don't even realize they're putting in there.
Well, you don't have time to filter it out. So you have other stuff. If it's slow, like a sermon or other stuff, you're able to obtain it. But if it's something fast like that, you're thinking, is that really real?
So Watchman has invited me, I don't know if we have time or not, to talk about Job. Job 28:7. And that's probably where, let's see, 28:7.
I'm almost there.
Job 28:7, are you sure? That's it? Because, Carrie, can you speak about the morning stars in Job 28:7? Do I got it? No, that's a different verse. Try relook that one up, because what I'm reading here is, there is a path which no fowl knoweth, and which the vulture's eye have not seen. The lion's whelps have not trodden it, nor fierce lion passed by it. That's the wrong one, Watchman. I'm actually a morning star by fact, but you'd have to understand why I'm saying this. Yeah. Can you find that verse for me, the actual verse? But that is an interesting insight on how things get worked out in heaven. Mary, I want to go back to this one. She goes, I went to see Wicked at the Hollywood Pantages theater years ago, was mesmerized by Satan, of course. Now she uses that word, mesmerized. Watchman says, let me check, hold on. Sorry, I'm getting confused with my buttons again. Nothing big. But mesmerization, the hypnotizing influences of Satan. Now, haven't really touched on music too much. Well, we've been mentioning it a lot, but there's an actual element in music. And if you guys could look up Christian Berdal's, he had such a great series. It was a long series, but trust me, the whole thing was very entertaining, because Christian Berdal is a wonderful speaker, and he would interject a lot of comedy and stuff. And but it was like a 6-part series on just music, and in particular Christian contemporary music. I watched the whole thing. I was completely mesmerized by it. No, I was completely
Carrie, come on.
Sorry. I couldn't resist. I don't know. I tried to make a joke, probably wasn't funny. I was riveted by it, okay? And it talked about the different types of musics, and when we hear about drums, right? When people play drums, that's usually frowned on in church, right? But they never tell you why. And turns out drums aren't bad. It's just the rhythms that are bad. You guys have probably heard of polyrhythms and syncopation.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you have a rhythm on a song, when you go,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a rhythm. But polyrhythms are, and it brings about like a hypnotic type of element to the music that shouldn't be there. And then you talk about syncopation, and one of the examples that Christian Berdal put forth is like when you're singing "Jesus Loves Me," Jesus loves me, this I know. It's the emphasis on what part of the, like, Jesus loves me, this I know. It's on the first part of the beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. All right, when you change the emphasis, it totally different song. It's like, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. You see how it just changed everything?
Yeah.
You're putting the emphasis somewhere else. And so this syncopation and polyrhythms, they change the format of the music altogether. A lot of rap music does, puts that syncopation, on the second and third beat rather than the first. Anyways, there's a lot of information in all of that.
I should look that up because I do the Native American drums stuff. So.
Well, and the Native American drums that you were doing were, and remember you kept asking me, that those were very, bum, 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 bum. That's not a polyrhythm.
Okay.
And see, like, rhythm is something that's very, very key to music, and it's something that God's given us for worship. But when we take polyrhythms, like the jungle drums,
Yeah.
and that's something entirely different. Now, you look at some of the Native American music and the drums nowadays, they are entering in some of those polyrhythms and things into their drums.
Yeah, I think so.
That you notice. I mean, the whole religion of the Native Americans is changing and it's evolving over time. It's like so many other religions, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I see is a lot of Native Americans. It's all for show now, for their dances and stuff. It's to be entertaining, I think.
Okay, so Watchman corrected, and he said it was Job 38:7,
38:7,
not 28:7. So let's go to Job 38:7. Oops. Job. Yeah. Okay. So it's when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
Or who shut up the sea with the doors when it brake forth as if it had issues out of the womb.
Yeah, now these are interesting verses. Now, it gives us a little sight of when the morning stars sang together and all of the sons of God shouted for joy. Now, when we read in Genesis, we read about the sons of God, and Jesus himself said, I'm going to forget some scripture right now because my mind was somewhere totally different. He says, did ye not know that ye are the sons of God? Basically, when we follow God, we're called the sons of God, right? So in Genesis, where it talks about how the sons of God married the daughters of men, and in those days were giants, mighty men of old, something along that line. People have subscribed the sons of God as being angels. The sons of God are just nothing more than those who are faithful to God. There's the sons of God and there's the children of men. That was a terminology in those days. Mary says, yes, I used to play the unedited Ringo Starr drum solo on Strawberry Fields over and over and over. Couldn't get enough of it back in the day. Little did I know why. We used to play the Strawberry Fields all the time.
Strawberry Fields was the one that everybody was committing suicide.
Committing suicide too, yeah. And then, speaking of suicide, wasn't it the MASH theme song?
Yeah.
Suicide is painless.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. How did that go, Lisa?
I don't know.
Oh, come on.
You did it just right.
Did I?
Mm-hmm. Suicide is painless. That was the main.
That was a song, yeah. And they would play that on, which I love the MASH series. I watched the MASH series. And you did too, I know, because you used to always
So I wanted to go all the way back to what I was talking about when I had those habits, because I everyone always stops right there, and then you never know how to overcome your habits. So what I did is I did board games. Actually, I made them out of big slabs of sugar pine, and I sanded it, painted it, and it took me a while because I was trying to make it look old and rustic. But so in the morning, instead of drinking all that coffee, I went out and I just sat there, and I had read this book about meditating, but in a good way, not meditating in a bad way, and just kind of looking around, and I did grounding where I put my feet on the ground or on the grass or on the dirt,
Bare feet.
bare feet. And California gets hot really fast. It's like it's 100 at 9 o'clock. And so I would do this before it got hot. And then but I physically took those cans of coffee and emptied them out, and along with my cigarettes and my chew and everything else. And I just got rid of it right in front of my face. I didn't ask Carrie to help me. I didn't say carry it out or go hide it. I had to physically do it. And when I was hurting, I felt like I was hurting. I would say, mind over matter, mind over matter. Lord is never going to give me nothing that I can't overcome, even though I was kind of cross-eyed for the next year. I didn't quite, I felt like I was coming out of a coma. That's how I felt. Felt like I was coming out of a coma. And as for the games, I just really got into it. It was close, and I just did my little hands-on projects and things like that. And anytime I my heart would start beating, and I would start going into an anxiety or something, and I would just go outside, and I would just sit down and just breathe again, and talk to myself and console myself, I guess. And that's what you have to do. And sometimes it's 80 to 100 times a day you got to do that. But you'll get over it. I'm trying to tell my son that has a really bad alcohol problem to do the same. And he's like, well, I got to have one. I got to have a beer. I got to have my cigarettes. And now he's got a puffer that has nicotine in it. So now he's doing it in our house and smoking cigarettes one after another outside. And I keep saying, well, you need to stop. You sound like John Wayne. His voice is really deep, and he coughs. Oh, he wakes up and he's just coughing for a solid hour. So, but I get on him. And one day it'll catch. One day he'll be strong enough to do it.
Well, we pray that one day the Lord will intervene in his life like he did our lives. That's our prayer. That's our prayer for our sons, and
it's a prayer for everyone out there. And you can, if you have issues like that, you can overcome them. You can. And if you would like to talk with me or anything like that, it'd be wonderful. So,
yeah, if you guys send some contact info to prophecymontana@gmail.com, and Lisa would love to talk.
And I'd love to pray with you.
Yeah. So, well, we're about an hour and 50 minutes almost into this, Lisa. I think we should probably call it a night and resume our regular duties. But hey, guys, thanks so much for hanging out there with us. We always have a great time here with you guys, and good comments as usual. And you guys had to straighten me out on history a little bit earlier on, but I'm always happy for that. And so we just would like you guys to have a blessed rest of your week. And we'll see you guys Sabbath, 9 o'clock Mountain Time, where we'll do the Sabbath school lesson. So thanks so much for listening. Hit that thumbs up. And so consider subscribing if you guys haven't already. And please, Mary says, please get on him. Please get on him, Mama Lisa, and keep him in daily earnest prayer. Yeah, she does. She takes it to him. So Trish says, I'll send you my number, Lisa.
Cool.
So that sounds fantastic. She's looking forward to that. So, all right, guys, with that, thank you so much, and God bless each and every one of you guys.